both good and bad. Today we come in to talk about how to be better allies, which is important because that's the only way things can topple and things can change is if we all work together. But if we work together well is the thing. Anti-Blackness is at the root of all of this. And it has always been at the root of all of this. It is a key component in white supremacy. It is a huge component in capitalism. It is a nail in the coffin of colonization. And we all are indoctrinated with it. Everybody, Black people, brown people, gay people, everyone is a part of this. It's a key component. It keeps this a well-oiled machine. And a huge part and a key component and a way we hone in on dismantling all of this is if we go into that key component and hack at it from there. So that's the first thing, and that's the first step, being honest about that. There is doing anti-racism work or being complacent in colonization and giving into colonialism. That's it. We're all problematic in this. We were all taught to be problematic in this. It is ingrained into the very systems. It makes it so we don't unite. It plays out in everybody's culture. The closer to darkness you are, the more demonized you are, the more fucked up it gets for your existence. And that's except for mainstream white culture, where the darker you are, and if you bought it, you are godly. That is a mark of godliness. If you are originally light and white, and then you buy it, that's a mark of, classism in some type of way. But it's a nice, mind fuck. But first step is confronting that and being honest about that, and not carrying that in a way where you cannot move forward, but carrying that in a way where we can all move forward. When we carry that in a way where we cannot confront it at its root, when we carry that in a way where we cannot heal it, when we carry that in a way where it becomes a burden that is so fucked up that we are stagnant in life, that does no one no good whatsoever. But carrying it and acknowledging it in a way where we can utilize it as fuel to decolonize ourselves and deconstruct ourselves, and also utilize our privileges and our resources in order to advance Blackness, then we all win. So is everybody with me? Is everybody good, first and foremost? All right. Sweetness. I'm gonna do this and walk inside so it's a little bit quieter. Alrighty then, how do we become better allies? So confronting our anti-Blackness, understanding that this is the accomplice hour. There's allies and accomplices. And when you are my accomplice, you are standing with me. You are very much by my side, and we are doing this together. So that is what is very much needed in this space. Confronting this in our households and where we stand is key. Those of us who are racists don't belong or not in a lot of our day-to-day lives. We deal with racists, we deal with anti-Blackness a lot of times, and in those not in the most hurtful, but in a lot of like external most hurtful spaces outside of our households. There's a lot of you who deal with it within your household. You see it. So confronting it right then and there, confronting it in our households, when after we have confronted it in ourselves, after we've understood how uncomfortable it is, and I am someone who looks at anti-Blackness that I was conditioned with every single day. I am someone who has had to deal with how hurtful it is to watch how I have displayed anti-Blackness towards other Black people, towards myself, towards my own culture. I have understood how that hurt me internally, and also that how that hurt externally. So when we understand that, being able to come at someone else, being able to empathize as well as go hard at motherfuckers when we are confronting them in their anti-Blackness, helps us to help someone else unravel their anti-Blackness, but it also helps us to continually to unravel ours. So we never come from a savior complex. We never come from a I'm better than you complex. We're always confronting the fact that this is something that has been a key component within colonization. This has been a key component within capitalism for hundreds of years. So as long as we are present to it always and confronting it within ourselves, we are able to confront it within our family, starting at home. Because the racists that we are meeting, the racists that we are encountering outside have families. They are human too. They are very much human. They have families and jobs they are going to, and they have been given passes. They have been given very intimate passes by loved one when they've told the nigger joke, when we told jokes about the darker skinned person in the family. They've given these subtle passes, like, no, it's fine. We're all on accord here. We all don't like the darkie here. So confronting that at its root in those subtle places is key. Even like to speak on a level of Amy Cooper, how the Amy Coopers lead to the George Floyd cases, how those very subtle acts of racism, those very subtle acts of those beginning spaces lead to our death. Just like that is very real. That pipeline is very real. We need to understand that checking it at its root is very real. So I'm compelled to tell a story that happened to me this week. And this is a story that happens to someone who does much protection work. This is a story that happens to someone who is very up on, their things, and also comes from a hood background and a magical background and all that good stuff. But racism is out here, and motherfuckers is hella emboldened in this bitch. So last Tuesday, I went to the magic store, and I went to get some things. I got those things, and I was coming back from the magic store, and I took a walk. And I took a walk because I was feeling some kind of way about all of this Black death. Literally feeling all kinds of ways. We are already, as a death doula, I was already registering and doing work around everyone who has died from COVID and the American healthcare system and all that associated with it. But then to be hit with this on top of that, as soon as things started lifting, Black trans women started dying. Black women started dying, Black men started dying, and it was literally exclusively because of racism. Taking all of that in, I took a walk and to do the things, to do all the healing things, and to do all the self-care things, and to care for myself as much as I could. I got my magic supplies, and I went to the liquor store. Because the liquor store has, particular liquor store has a CBD drink that I like for cheap. So I went to that liquor store to get that CBD drink and a blunt wrap. And I walk up to the liquor store, and I see a white man hanging out of the store. And he is thoroughly cussing someone out. I don't realize who he is cussing out until I get to closer to the space. He is cussing out a Black woman. She appears by herself with a dog. And she's holding her own, but he's vicious. And then her friend comes out of the liquor store, and he realizes that she has backup. And so he gets a little bit less vicious, but he's still cussing her all the way out. They try to walk away, and he's going even harder at her. And I just stop to hold the space. It seems like she's got it and she's got backup, but at this point in the game, I'm very used to being a Black woman not being backed up. So it's super important to me that when I am with another Black woman, especially a Black femme, that I back them up and they know that I'm there. And I stood that ground. She dropped the leash and gave it to her friend, and she walked over to the white man, and he met her. And I don't know what she said, but I know I'm from the hood. I know what it is when a black girl is mad and her neck starts popping. I know, and I could hear inflections, and I know he was getting his soul red. So I was like, she's got this, but I'm still gonna hold space. And I saw his energy decrease, and she snatched that dude's soul and was done. And I was like, it's over, it's cool. They walked on their way, and I went to the liquor store to get my CBD drink. And I go to the liquor store, and he is defeated outside of it, but kind of not bothering anyone. And I walk up to the counter, and I get my CBD drink, which is right there at the counter in the cooler. And I ask for the blunt round. And the white man rushes in from behind me. And I can, even though I felt like he was chill, I am from the hood. And I also know what it is like to be alone as a Black woman and be under attack. So I was very much aware that anything could pop off, and was aware of him. And I felt him and was keeping my eye on him rise up and rush me. And he was starting yelling, "This black bitch, this white trash, this fucking black bitch, these fucking black bitches." And I could not.
Tell me if it's too much and I could put headphones on.
Do you gotta do? So he rushed up to me and proceeded to say all these black bitches. And that was just a day where I didn't have it. I absolutely didn't have it. Because watching people play Black people die is very taxing, especially when you're not looking for it. I curate the fuck out of my social media and what I watch, and it's very super hard to then turn on every outlet, turn on every social media space, turn on every news media, and you just see our death played over. You just see fucked up shit about you every day. That was just a day where I was not, and I was into the grieving aspect of it. I was very much into the rage and giving into all the things I felt, so that I could be whole. And I was into treating myself as a human and acknowledging the inhumanity of what the fuck I've been surviving my entire life. And how fucked up it is that we just gotta die like that. We're already surviving COVID, and we can't even survive racism. That's fucked up. And I was grieving that and doing all the things you're supposed to do when you heal. And then to be assaulted. So I turned around because I have a background that is all about defending myself. And I am very much a person who has, am a lover and a fighter, and am all into that. And the spiritual traditions that I come from, and my indigenous traditions, as I have researched, and most indigenous traditions as I have researched, include the war gods and goddesses. And there's always a motherfucker in our worshiping that don't take no shit. And I happen to be the daughter of all of those, the lovers and the fighters. And I immediately turned around and I yelled at him, and I got really big, and I backed him up, and I said, no, no. And I was yelling, and I yelled last night, so I'm not into yelling right now, but I yelled really loud, no. And I got very big, like he was a wild animal, because that's exactly what he was exhibiting. And I told him I don't consent, and I was screaming all of this, and I backed him up, because that was definitely not a response he was looking for. And he backed up, and I backed him up all the way out the door. And he kind of stood there. I turned around and understood he was going to blow. I tried to complete my experience so I could leave. And then I felt him rush again really fast. And at the top of his lungs, he said, "Aren't we tired of all of these nigger nogs?" And I snapped. It was definitely post-traumatic slavery disorder. So let's talk about that real quick. Post-traumatic slavery disorder. That is literally the memory, the ancestral memory of being enslaved in your bones, in your skin, in your DNA. Slavery was amended 150 years ago. And there's been recent accounts that have come out that Black people were enslaved up to 1960 in the South. They didn't get news that the Emancipation Proclamation happened up until 1960. And there was no healing, there was no kumbaya circle, there was none of that. After that, there was the Reconstruction and Jim Crow and all of that, which we proceeded to be on the losing end too. And then that turned into prison reform. Also, back, space, the spiritual impact of what's happening is the police were formed specifically to hunt Black people. That's where that came from. When you look into the history of the police, it was literally the slave patrol. So all of this is super, the traumaticness of all of this is wild as fuck. Coupled with is coming after a couple of years after, the water protectors, and this land being forged in the magic spell of the death and the extermination of 100 million Native American people. And then right on top of that, you have a stolen people treated inhumanely for hundreds of years. Understanding what happened, slavery wasn't just picking cotton. It was fathers being made to rape your daughters and your mothers, sometimes for sport, sometimes for breeding. The beatings that were severe. Being your entire back being carved in, and that being the norm. There are birthmarks that some of us carry that are literally just the markings of recent ancestors from slavery. There are formations that I've seen on Black people that are literally the formations of our ancestors and the scars. So how to be a better ally is that understanding the severity of what happened to us here, because it wasn't just the picking of the cotton, and getting that education yourself. If that doesn't move you into something, I don't know what would, but also understanding that is about understanding the way a lot of this system works. This isn't a capitalistic system, it's a slave economy. So when we fight for the people who this was built on, we can actually dismantle the whole system. The whole system was based on us. It was based on us. So understanding how slavery happened and how it worked, what the story of the Ma'afa was, how awful it was to be transported for 8 months at a time, chained, back, foot to head, side to side, mixed with the feces, and sometimes chained to a dead body. Understanding that sharks migrate and have a different behavioral pattern because of the bodies of Black people. Sharks had nothing to do with people and had a whole different life that they were living until the Ma'afa, which is the slave trade. And that behavior changed because of the Black bodies that littered the ships. And they learned how to follow those ships. Some of those Black bodies because we jumped off, some of those Black bodies because they were put over. So understanding that a lot of y'all carry that too. that blood is not just mine, that is within your DNA, be it 1%, be it 2%, be it 3%, and really getting to and not romanticizing the story of how I got there. I'm very clear about how the German and that one boat Norwegian is within me, and it's not a romantic story whatsoever. It's not a story to be romanticized. It's a story to be honored in all its gruesomeness. It's a story to be known because the people who survive that are ridiculously magical, and we should not be alive. That story was amended technically 1960, if we really want to talk about it, and there was a fair amount of slaves who were not, and enslaved people who were not, liberated till 1960. Language, changing your language. A lot of us learned that Black people or slaves were brought from Africa, and that is not true. Slaves were not brought from Africa, and it's very important that you correct people because language is important. scientists, very magic people. They took scientists. They took the smartest people. They took like smart people. They took architects. They took athletes. They took farmers. They took people. And then there was a system that was perfected, that the system that we are all being currently up under, that's the basis for. It got tested on us. Understanding that. So changing language, slaves did not come from Africa. People were brought from Africa and made into the enslaved. So those are some kind of philosophical things to be a better ally. Some physical things, pouring your redistribution, reparations. If you have benefited from Black culture, if you benefit from Black healers, supporting that. Understanding that Black maternal rate, this is a birthing class. Black women die. And we die because we're not listened to. Marion J. Sims, he founded gynecology, and he tested on the enslaved women for free with no anesthesia, all of that. This is the man who they praise, who a lot of the information that if you go into midwifery, this is what you will study, and it is off of his research. So it is up to your duty to, number one, even when I walk into hospitals and do any type of doula work, I always acknowledge where I'm at, and I always do a little bit of ritual as a spiritual person, acknowledging like the knowledge that I'm also pulling from and the energy that I'm pulling from, because it's going to be there no matter what. And this is the foundation that's there. So giving thanks and honoring those Black women, bringing those Black women into the birthing room, because that's an opportunity to allow them to experience like beautiful birth, allowing them to experience a space where someone is being cared for by a Black woman, someone is being cared for by someone who understands the story. So that in itself brings healing energy. But understanding that history, also understanding those of you who, the history of just to the medical complex and how it has experimented on Black people. A lot of what has influenced our medical complex culture was people who came, was eugenics, was a lot of things that were going down when that the people during the Holocaust, and how the Jewish people were being experimented on, including other people. There's a lot of that science that came right over to the United States, and we were the recipients of that. So there's ideology that is still present in the medical complex that Black people don't feel pain. And that's something that there's a recent report that's up to like 2018 that is recently, there are doctors who have gone to medical school that really reported that they believe that Black people don't feel pain to the level that other people do, literally because we are thought about as inhumane. This is literally why we don't receive care. During the beginning of this COVID crisis, there were people who, Black people who went to the doctor, and there was one woman who her case went viral, but she went to the doctor 3 times understanding that she had COVID-19 and she needed help. And each time the doctor said she was having a panic attack and she died. And that happens often. We're not believed. My cousin almost died when she gave birth to her daughter. The birth was fine. Everything about the birth was fine, but she almost bled to death. My cousin was 38 when she gave birth to her daughter. She looked like she was 26 because of that age, because of the way she looked. They wouldn't listen to her when she would tell them about what's going on with her body. They forced her into positions and things. They gave her a full hysterectomy and then literally tried to make her walk and tried to make her do things that weren't, healing for her, and forced her body into overdrive. She literally almost died several times until I advocated for her. So that's another way to be an ally, is advocate, step in front of people and use your privilege. I was another Black woman when I was with my cousin, but I had the privilege of being on my feet. I also had the privilege of knowing a lot more stats in regards to maternal birth rate. I was able-bodied at that moment in time. I was in my right mind. She had lost a lot of blood. She was in a very precarious position health-wise, and she was super emotional. So I stood in the gap for her. I literally stood in the gap. When I went to the hospital to visit her, and she looked at me in my face, and with tears in her eyes was like, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't feel good about this. Like, they're not treating me right, and I'm scared. Like, that was a very clear, like, no, you're scared for your life. And like, you're not in a space where you can advocate for yourself, and no one is advocating for you. And I stood in the gap. I asked for the director of the hospital. I have, activist experience. I'm also just a stone cold bitch when it comes to people that I love, and I'm super down to play bad cop. I asked for the director, and I said all the right things. I was very clear about the fact that Black women die in the hospital's care. I was very, very clear about the stats. I ran down the stats and what was going on with my cousin, and how as a birth worker myself, I knew what was going on and that they were in violation of some things, and that needed to be answered to, or I would be answering to people outside of this hospital and causing a lot of trouble. Because of that, like, the director began to oversee her treatment. I was banned from the hospital. Because they don't like to be threatened to their base. But everything happened to where my cousin is alive. But I really believe, and she believes, we talked about it, that she wouldn't be alive had not stood in the gap. So your job is to stand in the gap. Your job is to use your voice. Your job is to use your skin tone. Your job is to use your privilege. Your job is to use your body. Your job is to use your wealth. Your job is to use anything at your disposal, not just in the birth world, but in this fight, is to stand in the gap, is to stand in the middle, and to give us the space to breathe. And that's all she needed. She needed the space to breathe, and once I was able to stand in the gap for her and give her that space to breathe, she was capable. She knew exactly what she needed. She articulated what she needed for her care. She was very clear about what she needed to get better. People who are sick, people who need help, people who are marginalized, people who are at the core of the fight always know what to do. They've been at this for a very long time. They've been fighting for a very long time. They've been at this longer than you. So trusting their voice, trusting that they know exactly what to do, and all you do is stand in spaces where they cannot. You stand in spaces where they don't have the reach. You stand in spaces where they were standing in spaces, but they're too tired to stand in that space. Once I stood in that space and gave her enough breathing room, she handled her business the way she needed to. And she was able to get well enough and be in a space again where she was advocating for herself and taking control of her care and in those spaces. So being a person that sees our humanity, confronting that's why it's super important to confront your anti-Blackness. You have friends and family who are doctors, and they might not admit to you that they don't see Black people as human, but as it turns out, it is a super common thing. We're not taken seriously when it comes to our care because of those simple things that are not unpacked and that are ingrained, and it ends up costing us our life. How is everybody so far? Is this benefiting people? Is this giving people some ideas? Is this helping people? Okay. Let's get to the witchy side of things. Let's get to the witchy side of things. For those of you who are those healers in that capacity, using your magic, using your traditions. There is a deep anti-Blackness that exists between the African-American people here, Black Indigenous people of America, and the Native American people of America, and that was sowed intentionally. There was a time when we were escaping, and we've been fighting back since the moment we were enslaved. In every single continent, we've been mixing the Indigenous people on all the continents and all the lands. We congregated, we got together originally. And when that became apparent, the colonizer figured that out. There was a very deep campaign that was waged to form a wedge between us. In a lot of spaces, that really worked really, really well. If you look into the history of things, there was a lot of Native American tribes who were paid handsomely to give up towards the end of all of the first reformation of slavery, that they were made to turn against us. There was money given, there was land given, there was incentives given for basically not fucking with Black people. When we had ended up forming a very real history and a very real relationship together. So looking at that, other POC, non-white non-Black folks, looking at the relationships that a lot of us have had, that the peaceful beginnings, the very peaceful interactions that a lot of us had in the beginning, and also the intentional separations that has happened, the deep anti-Blackness, because again, anti-Blackness is just not for white people, it's for everybody. Everybody drinks this Kool-Aid. Everybody drinks this Kool-Aid. So making sure that we are addressing it like that as a other POC. Also making sure that sometimes, like when we are even when we're talking about issues, there are issues that are all POC and there are issues that are Black. And making very clear that we're not lumping that together. That's also very clear of there are things that are very that are Native American and Native Indigenous based here. Keep saying Native American, I mean Native Indigenous, but there are issues that we need to be very clear that they are centered because that's their issues, and we need to make sure that we're centering Black issues as well. So watching our language and how we present things, because that minimizes a lot of our existence when we don't realize it. Our language has a lot of power in how we do things. So we were talking about the magic aspect of things. Yeah, there is a way that you can assist with us. There is a way in assisting our, like using your traditions, using your prayers, acknowledging us in your traditions, in your way, and lifting us up in that way, helping us grieve in those spaces, is always something that is needed. I put a lot of tips and tricks on my Lady Speech page of ways that there are actual ways that, other ways that we can do those things. But just remembering us in your practice is a big thing, and humanizing us in that space is, a big thing. So does anybody have any questions so far? I still have something to talk about, but does anybody have any questions? Is there anything specific you want me to get into? I haven't gotten into the chat so far, only for the yes stuff. But does anybody want to ask me things specifically?
Feel free to unmute yourselves, y'all, and ask me these questions.
Because I can't see everybody at once, but. Is there anything specific you want to talk about? Would you want me to get into a little bit of my background at all, or? Well,
I want to just reiterate how grateful I am for you to be here to help everybody. Thank you so much for all of your presence and all of the things.
Thank you.
Everybody's questions too, like when anything you have, like she is here so that we can be better. So your guys' silence needs direction también, like go ahead, ask questions. Don't be scared. We're in a safe place. Speech and I work together a lot, and we intend safe spaces, and our ancestors do healing together, and she is a healer and wants us to heal. All right. So I just encourage y'all to work through that fear and ask your questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you, Lady Speech, so much for all of it. Thank you. I am among the things that the actions that I'm feeling like I want to take right now, among many, is to get present to like some evil in my blood and in my line. And I'm brand new to ancestor work, and I understand the distinction between calling well ancestors and like having them at my back to help me in my resolve and in my clarity and in my commitment. And I know that there is a lot of not well, a lot of healing that needs to be done, and I feel scared and kind of unequipped. I'm wondering if you have any guidance on that.
I do, and I'm actually super hyped that you asked that question, so thank you. I'm super glad you asked that question. All right, y'all, so it's 8:00 and my roommate is yelling Black Lives Matter out the window. That's what you hear. I love it. So I love it so much. All right, so super glad you asked that question. Yes, let's get this shit in. So I'm like blackity black, 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 black. And I'm so proud of that. Like 86% black. I took a DNA test. Turns out 100% that bitch. But I am 100. I'm black. But I've got some German. I've got some white in me. I'm super clear that the immediate ancestors and the immediate people that I got that from do not fuck with me. They don't. They absolutely don't fuck with me at all. They do not fuck with me. They don't like me. They don't. However, I tapped into, everybody's colonized, and I think we got to get with that. Even white people. White people learned it on themselves first when you get into history. And so I tapped into their ancestors all the way back into the ones, I got into the ones that were pre-colonized. And the ones that are pre-colonized, fuck with me. They fuck with me so tough. During this time, and especially I'm on a path of initiating into voodoo. And during this time, as soon as I was like confirmed going into that direction, the non-Black ancestry that was old, that was pre-colonized, that is old as shit showed up tough. They showed up real tough and ready to lend their magic, ready to lend their energy, ready to lend their prayers, ready to lend their shit. And they were very clear. They were clear, like, oh no, we're not here for this. We're not here for this. This is not how we get down. This is not what we do. We're not into this is happening. We're not into the part of our blood that is not into you. That's not how we get down. And so when it comes to dealing with ancestors, there's ancestors that you fuck with and there's ancestors that you don't. And please understand that there's ancestors that don't fuck with you. And there's ancestors that do fuck with you. I've been in readings and there's a set of ancestors that exclusively is about me that does not walk with the rest of my family. Even though I share part of this ancestry with my father's side, even though I share part of this ancestry with my mother's side, there's a certain set of ancestors that are all about me, that are all about my shit because of how I'm presenting the path that I chose to be born into. So tapping into the ancestors, getting into the ancestors that are into you, and also being real cool. When I came across in ritual the ancestors that don't fuck with me, I was right back at you, motherfucker. Right back at you. Now, interestingly enough, the ancestors that do fuck with me, they fuck with me heavy. And there's from all sides. So they will lend you their support. And you can ask them for specific things. I've been asking my white ancestry for help dealing with white people, specifically white racist people. And specifically about how I encountered them and the magic that I use. There's a very specific magic and there's very specifically people that I call on. And I don't make the Black people in my line do that labor. I very much have been learned to be like, oh no, reparations all around. The white people, him up. Come on. What do I say? How do I act? How do I project? What do I do? Who do they need to see when they fucking with me? You get on it, and they're very much into that. So yeah, setting boundaries with your ancestors is a thing. Setting boundaries, but also there's a way that you can tap into and claim, because I embrace all that's in me. I'm Black, like I said, I'm Black as fuck, I love it, but I also embrace everything that I am. There's a way that I can also claim the inheritance. This land was built, it was stolen from 100 million people who were native indigenous to the space, and then the system that we know it was built by us for free. I have an inheritance. So I claim that through not only the tragic and the enslaved side, but also the very white side. The only reason why they in me is because of this recent history. So there's a claiming that I have, even though I do not claim their toxicity, I do not claim their racism, they don't fuck with me, I don't fuck with you either. We can all play this game in this bitch. Play the game they want to play. Now get away from me too. I don't like you either. I don't like you either. But if I'm experiencing bullshit and you were part of that bullshit, then guess who's gonna pay? You. So did that answer a little bit of that question? Did that give you some things?
So good. So many things. Really, really deep gratitude.
Sweet. And trust that there's going to be ancestors that don't fuck with you because you do this work. There's definitely going to be ancestors, that don't get with what you're doing. They ain't buying what you're selling because you're doing this deep work. And all of that is rooted in some very, very deep pain. So you just got to like step forward in it. But the healing that you're going to be able to give to the rest of your ancestry, actually, and including that ancestry that ain't into it, is going to, and also yourself and seven generations forward, is going to be far, worth far more. Anybody else have some other questions? And it can be personal stuff too. I'm like, this is the place and the time for it. So
I have a question, Speech.
what's it?
Hi, Lady Speech. I'm Myrto. Thank you so much. This is amazing. I would love to know more about your story. You mentioned you want to know about my background. And I was like, yes, I would love to know more about, I guess, how you came into birth work and more, whatever you want to share, really.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will share a little bit of how I came into birth work. I'm compelled to talk about, Spirit wants me to talk about a little bit of my childhood. So, so I don't really believe in trigger warning, but I see it for other people. I don't believe in it because as a Black person, my mom always fucking triggered. Anti-Blackness triggers me all the time, and I never get no warning. But trigger warning. I'm a survivor of child rape. I'm a survivor of child molestation. I survived being growing up Jehovah's Witness. I survived my parents being Jehovah's Witness, but being also fucked up and crazy in that. So my mom ended up being like she was a sex addict. I'd be trying to minimize her shit sometimes. But she was a sex addict, and she had substance issues as well, and also survived my very abusive father and some just really crazy Jehovah's Witness occultist shit. My dad was pretty much learned to be a psychopath, and his abuse and the things that happened to him, in part all the way rooted in anti-Blackness and growing up in the South, like in the 50s, like that really, made him, and also his background in his own family and the abuse he suffered made him into a very destructive, psychotic man who learned to hurt people for fun. So she ended up getting with him, and they had me, and she lost her mind and pretty much gave me, they both kind of, I guess, gave me the very best of who they are, which they, when not abused, when left to their own devices, if they could have been just left to do what they need to do, it would have manifested in some really magical shit, but it just didn't. So they gave me the best of them, and they gave me the worst of them. So I was with her for a while, and because of that, she was kind of lost her mind, and I was left to my own devices. And in that space, I became a survivor of child rape and child molestation, and under her watch. And at that time, she was pretty coked out, and she was pretty like drugged out and pretty out of her mind. She was doing the best she could. She was doing the absolute best that she could, and the best that she could was pretty bad for me. But I recognized that it was the best that she could, and under her watch, a whole lot of shit happened to me. I ended up going back. My parents were married until I was 2.5, 3. Made divorce, went with her. She overdosed a lot when I was a kid, but she almost died when I was 8, like bad. And that's when I went to go live with my dad. And so then the sexual abuse kind of stopped. It tickered off, but then really bad, physical abuse started. My dad he's a psychopath. He likes to hurt people for fun. So he was very inventive about how he hurt me and how he abused me. It was definitely beatings, but it was like some really like crazy shit. Like he comes from the South, and like his part of his upbringing was very modern, and part of it was very country. So I was definitely getting hogtied and treated. It was a rodeo for real, is what I could say. The way you see animals get treated in the rodeo is a lot of those practices were like done to me, and in an abusive way. So I survived that from 7 to the abuse mainly started when I was 8. So I survived that from 8 until 17 years old. And then I snapped, and I snapped, and the abuse stopped, and then I left my house when I was 18, and didn't look back. And so yeah, that's the shit that shaped me, and I was intensely aware as soon as I stepped foot out of my house. I was homeless for a while, and then was on my feet and on my own. But I was intensely aware of how broken I was, and how fucked up I was mentally, spiritually, in all the ways. I was very aware of that, and I also was very aware that it was an extraordinary thing to be aware of that. To be 18 and be like, oh yeah, you're real fucked up, and to name it and look at it and was like, well, I think I should do something about this before this all becomes something else. I got a feeling these things turn into the other things, if you don't look at things. So I'm a product of things that are natural in people, but I also kind of clicked. Like, I got hurt because a lot of people weren't fixed, and so I don't want to become a person who hurts people. And so I just became really fixated and focused on my healing from that moment on. I stumbled into birth work by accident. Like, fast forward, I just was being my healer self, and living my healer life and my artist life, and got caught up in situations where I happened to be there. And I was studying other things, and all of the other things that I was studying weren't related. Say different things from, breathing techniques to body work to, it was all of these different unrelated things. And I got caught up the first couple of times in being with pregnant people, and while they are giving birth, and it just became natural. It was a very natural thing to take a leadership position and understand what's going on. I'm a death worker, so it makes sense for me. So I am a midwife from tomb to womb. My specialty is really the tomb part. That is where I really have learned, working with spirits and working with the ancestors and midwifing people passing into death. But it is a very similar process, my loves. And so most of us who do birth work can do some level of death work, and do some level of death work. For me, I approach death work from working with the other side, and listening to them, channeling the midwives over there, but really just listening to them. They literally have these inside views. When you can work with your ancestors, they have a view. They can view inside the body. They can view inside the psyche in ways that you never can. There's snapshots they can give you. There's downloads they can give you about the situation, that nothing else can. And so a lot of my midwifery and birth work comes from that, really being reliant on, and there's technical stuff, but really just working on from that channeling aspect, and letting them telling me what to do and being guided in those spaces, and also coupled with study and things of that nature. So in this work, working with your ancestors and being close with your own people, being as close to your own traditions, as possible, is so beneficial. They have every one of us has birthing traditions, and they will absolutely guide you where you don't know someone before you. Someone in you does. Trust that. Where you don't know, someone in you fucking does. There's been 1,000 motherfuckers who have fucked to get you here. 1,000 at least. Hundreds of thousands, at least 100,000 motherfuckers. I'm betting. We've been around for a long time. There's been a lot of motherfuckers. So you don't know, but somebody in you does. So the more you are connected to, the folks inside of you, the more you are connected to your ancestors, that really helps you. And then when I really discovered how, how many Black women were dying because of what was happening, systematic racism and, medical racism, it was just more of a push. And I didn't realize in the beginning what it was, the womb to tomb thing, that it was, because it was the same. If you understand what death is about, you understand what birth is about. You understand what you understand it. You just have to flip it. So yeah, and like now it is a deeper concern, wanting to return. Birthing is political. This is very much a political decision. How you bring in the people determines a lot about their future, and our indigenous ancestors know that. So if we are more in control of how we come into the world, there's a lot we can rewrite. There are certain phenomena and things in life that you can rewrite your DNA. And we have to really come back into that cosmic knowledge. Sex is one of those things. Being with, and that utilizing sex in the proper way and being in this proper space, it can be ritualistic and rewrite your DNA and do healing in ways that are cosmic. Certain hallucinogenics coupled with ritual do those same things. But birth is a portal that you can like take care of a couple generations worth of shit. You can really tweak a lot of healing for like 7 generations back and forward if we control and have a different approach to birth. Once I understood that, that was also the cosmic pull of like, if you can just, the story that you help write, the way you help write someone's story as they come in, deeply affects a lot, you know? And so once I understood that, I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want to be a part of that magic. I definitely want to help, like, you know, help both the birthing person and the new being coming in, like have a really dope story. And what I'm really good at too is holding space. Like I can fucking hold a space. Once I hold a space, nothing is coming in. Once I set a circle, we're safe. Like we are safe. And my holds hold for a long time. So, once I understood that cosmic, connection to it, that is the thing that I was like, oh yeah, let's do this. Like, let's do this. Let's do this. So that is my deep healing. Yeah. So that's them. Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
No problem.
You. I really appreciate that storytelling. You're an amazing storyteller as well. I love your voice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rayanne says on the chat, when's your book coming out?
You know what? A few of you been calling me on that, and we ain't got shit but time. So soon. I'm getting my computer like next week, so it'll be soon.
Lachey says, so grateful. Thank you for sharing all of that amazing wisdom.
No problem. Thank you guys for holding space. Thank you guys for listening so deeply. I appreciate that. I really do. I really do. So how are we on time? Do I still have more time, or are we at the end? I haven't been paying attention.
I scheduled it for an hour and a half, but I'm sure for myself, I could listen to you for longer than that, as you well know. But I feel like
we have like 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
12? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So whatever else you want to share, or if you want to take another question.
It's all good. I'm going to take another question. Yeah, we can keep going. Yeah, if you guys have another question, feel free to interject at any time.
I have a question.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. What is the question?
Okay, so I feel like this might be a silly question to ask here, but trying to face fears, right? That was the invitation, so here I am. So I'm wondering, so in my lineage, I feel really connected to one particular line, like my paternal grandmother's line, but the rest of my family, I feel no connection with. And I don't know how to communicate with ancestors that are not in that line that I feel connected with. And I imagine that there are a lot of different ways and different, I guess, just manners of doing that communication. But if you have any suggestions on where to start, that would be great.
For you, and for a lot of us, understanding that the way our ancestors fuck with us is kind of like an arrow, and there's people who are at the top, the most intense part of our arrow, who fuck with us heavy, and then then there's people who fuck with us, but they come and say what's up on holidays. They check in on your birthday and be like, you good? They check in when you're in trouble, like, hey, what's up? Like, you know, I have warrior ancestors who really, that are super present now, because they only fuck with me when they only around when it's time to fight. They literally don't come when it's time for sexy time. They don't do that. They don't come for like celebration. They don't do that. When they feast, when I'm mad, when I'm righteously mad, when I'm like, oh, when that white boy fucking turned around and said that shit, I grabbed that dude by his throat chakra and fucking crushed that shit and pushed him out the door. Like, he called me a fucking whole ass nigger, and I was like, well, that's not, no. And that's who showed up. It wasn't a hesitation. Like, that was a whole offering. They were like, oh yeah, this is what we like. We like to play. I am initiating into being a mambo, which is, you know, a voodoo high priestess. And so, and with that, like, I've already initiated into being, into Ifa, and even into that tradition, I was the child of Oshun and the child of Obatala. That, you know, Obatala is the father, but he's also very much the warrior. I'm always like the child of like the warrior spirits and like the love goddesses. And that's very much true. Like, I fucking snapped into that shit and those ancestors showed up. They were ready. Like, these are the chiefs. These are the warriors. These are the dudes who like fight. And like, they are my defense. Like, if you come for me, and like, even if I don't act it, if you came for me and it was fucked up and I didn't do anything, they gonna fuck you up. Like, they don't play that shit. And so they showed up then, and we got down then. And like, I fucked that dude up then. And they show up when I give them the offerings that they want, but we have an understanding of when they come around. There's certain ancestors who fuck with it. Like, there's a hierarchy of shit that goes down. So you got your main team and your main vein. Everybody in your blood is useful. And you be okay with like why you came on that. There's a lot of like, when my ancestry.com updated, it was like, oh yeah, you also got 1% German. And I was like, you know what, that makes sense. I've always been like, why are y'all so fucking, I've always been obsessed with their brand of nastiness. And I'm like, oh, because you me and I'm you. That's why. And I'm like, and y'all are part of the crew that fucks shit up. That's who you are. Y'all don't come around. Except for when it's time to break things. And I appreciate that. I fucking appreciate that. Like, let's go and do our thing. So did that kind of give you some, you know, you fuck with, you be okay with, if you got your main team and you fuck with them, you honor everything inside of you, you embrace it, because it's there for a reason. Everybody's present for a reason. They're gonna, you know, you be open. Be open. I wasn't open to my white ancestry for a long time, and I had every reason not to be. And they were good with that. Your spiritual team knows a lot more and sees a lot more than you. So nobody in that team ever, my spiritual team has never been like, oh my God, we fought you for any part of your journey. They've been like, we're happy you're here when you're here, you know, every step of the way. So even when I didn't fuck with them, they fucked with me heavy. And, you know, as soon as I became open and understood, then they understood why. I was like, I don't fuck with you because the recent ancestry is evil. Like, they're fucking evil. Literally, that is slavery. Like, y'all owned us, and most of y'all are unapologetic about that shit. So I don't like that. Like, how can I embrace you and you don't embrace me? And I had every right to that anger, and I worked that out. And then when I got behind that, like, the other ancestors were like, you do know that they ain't the only motherfuckers. And I was like, oh yeah, that is right. You come from another motherfucker. Wait, who we come from? Who's up under there? So like, and they have their place. Like, you know, as soon as I was initiated into voodoo, which is very Black and very African, that is actually when the white ancestors got like real active, and they're in their lane. They don't like, you know, overtake anything, but you best believe the homie came to me the other day and was like, oh, here's a German spell that they told me to give you. And I was like, oh yeah, they definitely told me to give you. You know, I definitely need that. As soon as he read it to me in English, I was like, oh yeah, I'm about to fuck up a racist real quick. I'm about to call the old gods. Okay? These are my people too. I'm about to stand on it. I'm about to stand on it. Get your ass. So did that give you something?
Yes, I love that. That's so helpful. I mean, just it kind of just put in context that what I do for work is like I'm very like warrior centric all the time. And so that's probably why this particular family line is like the only one that keeps popping up, because like I'm constantly fighting. So it just makes me think that I should start looking into like other healing practices or yeah, other aspects of like myself and my lineage that I can delve into to learn more. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Hello, Lady Speech.
Hey,
Uh,
hey.
Just want to say thank you so much for being here, for taking the time, for giving your energy. Thank you to your ancestors for surviving so you could be here with us today. Thank you so much. I have a couple questions, and Anya also has a couple questions. I'm really interested in your work as a death worker, so I would love to hear a little bit more about that, and also how we can use that magic to fuck up these racist motherfuckers that are out here and possibly turn that on them. I don't know. I ain't trying to be, you know, but I'm just saying, how could we use that, you know, on that witchy side? And then Anya has.
Okay.
And then, yeah, my question was on the lines of where, like, what books would you kind of like recommend to get started for, you know, like the decolonization of your kind of own identity, you know, too, because I have like a hard time tapping into like a lot of ancestral lines, and I think that's also because like I've been told like multiple times that I have to work on, you know, that like inside myself and my lineage. So, and I can't say I'm like tapped into any warrior side by much, but I really like feel scholastic, like, you know, power and power of education. That is where my like fight lies. And so like definitely just getting all into the literature, like you said, stating facts, stating stats, you know, to fight on all fronts. So
Okay. So first, let's do the death worker aspect of things. I got into the death worker aspect literally when you sit down and allow yourself space to see patterns that are just showing up in your life, and following that along with, and when you see how those patterns match up with your interests and your skills and how things grow or get intense with each other and how they parallel, and then you marry those things, a lot of, you know, those things are very much a part of your path. So being a death worker came about because I understood that I was a medium, and working with the dead was the gateway drug. And I worked with the dead by giving messages and channeling with my medicine. But then when like I started showing up when people were dying, when I started showing up right after people were dying, when I started showing up when people were dealing with death, and like spirit put me right in the middle of that. It took me like, you know, it took me like honestly 10 years to name it, but it was that work where when I was the one helping people I was doulaing that. I was helping people like birth that grief. I was helping people get over it. And it was from different perspectives. You know, I was sometimes helping the dead. There were certain spaces where I was helping the dead transition from their spirit into the next world because they were a person who wasn't very spiritual. And that's scary. Being a death worker and like that aspect of it is really, really, there's different aspects and levels of being a death worker. Part of what I do is helping people go bye-bye, bye motherfucker, leave, or they're rest in fucking peace. And it is when you do not have a spiritual anchor, or when you have a lot of regrets about dying, that is the scariest death. And like that's super scary. I've seen a few, but that's the scariest shit to watch go down. I mean, no one has an anchor. That's fucking horrible. I also work with people. The dead are good. There's some people who transition and they're good. They're like, oh, I'm prepared for this shit. I'm ready. Bye. And so my job is to help the living deal with the dead being gone. And yeah, that's basically the two ways. You help the living process and you help the dead process. And you do those two different things. So the way you can help use death work is like, besides my, wishing, and like, please believe that we all have magical traditions where we can do death work on people. That's a lot of work, and I don't think the average person needs to engage. However, what you can do is walk the dead to someone. You can walk them right on back to someone. You can walk them right on back to who caused their death. What you can do, you can help someone find their way to the person who fucked them up.
Okay.
You can assist someone in their own justice.
Right.
And whatever karma them and creator has worked out is whatever karma and creator them is they have worked out,
Okay.
But yeah, you can help them walk back to and see the person who and help them resolve theirs. You assist, you ride their energy.
Araceli, también Lady Speech does personal consults, etc., and you can find her at her Instagram, and hit her up, and then she could explain more to you about all of that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
So for the decolonizing question, the literature, the first thing I would say about that though, is like, there are the technical books, but decolonizing through the culture, like decolonizing first through like what you're passionate about, the things that light your fire within the culture, like experiencing the culture first, and then getting to the academics of it all after, is like the first thing in like the decolonization. There is the books that are definitely important to like unlocking our shit, but like once we unlock it in our DNA, once you unlock it there, once you unlock it in the body, that in itself has a different way of unlocking the information as it is already contained in your brain, and as it is already contained in our bones. But yeah, that's the first answer to that. Like in aiding in our decolonization is going to our actual culture itself, all of it. Sinking into the practice of our cultures, the medicine of our cultures, the joy of our cultures, the art of our cultures, like getting in the expression of our cultures, in that aspect of, first decolonization. Does that make sense? Did that make sense at all in answering coming at your question?
Yeah. I think, especially because that's exactly where I'm at. I've, like everything, this whole movement has brought forward exactly like everything. I'm very well versed in like my history.
Mm-hmm.
I know the history of like how exactly Black people came to be exactly where we are in this country. Like I do know my history like that. I think where, especially I'm frustrated, is because I work in like predominantly white spaces, like particularly, and so it's really like hard to have these conversations. I have these conversations all the time, like even since this started, I have been approached. It's like, it's crazy how people like will hit me up, right? I don't text anybody, but I have gotten texted a lot. Like, are you okay? Are you good? Like your family, like even before like knowing what was fully happening, I knew exactly like the danger that I was in, and so it's one thing to, be on the ground in the front line with people who already like understand your mindset, like 1,000%, it's like, I don't have to educate you, because you're standing exactly like in an accomplice with me, and it's another thing to like approach and have people approach you, just wanting to be, seen as like not racist, and it's just like, I recognize everything that led me here, and I recognize, like the colonization within myself, exactly like what I tell people. I'm like, eradicate it in your home. If you really want to like help at the end of the day, like make sure to ice out racism in your household. Like don't let that exist, because exactly it exists with all of us, and it exists, like deep, yes, ingrained, like exactly not even like 10 generations back, 3 generations back, it's like it exists right now, and I think it's difficult being in those white spaces and like learning how to truly like transition out of it, because I definitely know that I don't have like I don't have hate for myself, but I have like inner conflict that it's very like present, and I can reason with myself, all like day and night, but it's to like, yes, learn more of the literature to like bring to people, to bring the facts forward, to bring the stats forward. Because exactly, we started something that I want to see go all the way. I want to see the true like dismantleization of racism, right? I don't want this to just be a movement where it starts, only goes so forward, and then we end up stagnant, which like might happen, but any way you can push forward, any way that we can just literally uproot, like the hatred, like what information do you put forward, like where do you turn to, what books do you tell them to read, what
in the end, actually what I tell them to do, because it's a different prescription for everybody. For white people, I tell them that their first thing is to abandon whiteness and become a white race trader, because Whitelandia doesn't exist. Once that really is unlocked inside of there, then you can figure out where the fuck you come from, and then learn the story of colonization where you came from, because France did it different. France did it different than Switzerland, than England, than all of that, and it's a different prescription for all of that. Like that colonization hits different. Even when we look at like culturally what happened in Africa, like enslaved people did not come from all of Africa. They did not like enslave the enslavement as we know it. They came from a certain part of Africa. There were certain things going on in Africa, from Nigeria, from the Benin and Togo, from all that, from Cameroon, from that coastal area, from South Africa. There's also historically an intersection of what those specific people were doing culturally. So understanding and what going on. Nigeria has every country there has a different story, but like I have a lot of Nigerian, so like I'm very interested and have always actually been interested in Nigerian shit because I'm fucking Nigerian. But like the story of colonization around Nigeria is fucking interesting in comparison to the other blood that like is present in my veins and how different people fought back, and like the different attitudes that are present inside of me. There are like specific things, but like literally when I said like starting with the culture, not just like the it's not even the facts. When I was younger, it was like giving a lot of facts and decolonizing from that way. But like meeting people in our humanity. The thing about white supremacy is that they ain't human either. White supremacist patriarchy does not humanize white people. It just gives a white people privilege. It dehumanizes white people because it separates white people from their shit, because ain't no Whitelandia. So you really are not connected to any culture. That's why it's really easy for people who identify as white to appropriate other people's culture, because there really isn't anything you have to hang on to. Once you be like, no, your ass is Finnish, you are Norwegian, you are Celtic, and you are Welsh. And those have some very interesting stories and some very interesting ways of how they came about and what happened and what's going on, and like that what attitudes you came from, and like the different things. So like, and also like there is, and when we can, it's through the culture because we understand the fucked up history, but then also we can access the magic. There's deep magic in all of that. Everybody's got some very deep magic. Everybody's got some very deep like beauty also to be able to anchor onto and to hang on to as well. So there is like the basic prescriptions, like there's the white fragility books, and I've got some book lists that I can just put in the chat when we're off of here, or get it to you guys in a different space. But also like it's very much to that prescription of like getting into like when like the aspect of the culture heals. So the culture heal, getting into like the aspects of the culture that heal ourselves and humanize ourselves, but also forcing people into their own cultural aspect. A lot of anti-racism work is definitely about looking at like the cultural aspect of things, but a lot of it, I start with a lot of it is like, where the fuck you come from? Where's your story? Like so much of white supremacy is about like white inadequacy and white inferiority because whiteness doesn't exist. And it's a whiteness was created to distinguish between the other, which white people and the other, but it's not rooted in anything. And because it's not rooted in anything, there's no base, there's no foundation, and there's a fear and an inadequacy, that just exists. It don't have no root. It literally doesn't have any root except for we're better than you and there's power there. But that power is based on some fragile shit. So yeah, like there are like the basic, the books, but then also like understanding like how the culture of how even getting into the culture of white supremacy and where pointing out the dehumanization in that. And yeah, like getting into, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it puts even my argument a little bit more eloquently than I have. So, but yeah, it makes exact sense. Yeah.
And was that helpful?
I'm sorry?
Was that helpful as well?
Yeah, it really was.
Is there any other questions, my loves?
You're such a badass.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have reflections. It takes one to know one and see one.
Me and Speech don't ever remember how we met.
We don't.
Like in each other.
She's the only person, like, I think about that like a few times a year and I'm like, I don't know how I met her. I do not remember it at all. I don't remember it at all. I imagine we were just dancing. It was just...
Anya and I don't know how we met each other either. I just asked her, like, how do we meet? And she's like, I don't fucking know.
She came back from Spain one day and she was just like, hey, Anya. I'm like, hey, Araceli. Like, oh my God, long time no see.
We became friends.
I have no idea how we truly met. No.
You start talking to someone. I think that's what happened. I think we just kept doing it. We just kept talking. And then it's like, oh, we've always been talking.
Yeah. We went on a road trip once and we didn't get in a fight at all.
Yeah,
we did an exorcism. That was fun. I was like, when you were talking about who the ancestors were, like who's at your arrow, I was like, what ancestors come out when I do exorcisms? That's just crazy.
TV channels, all of the ancestors, like everybody's people. That is the benefit though of being like so mixed. Like everybody's shit was like, what's up? I was like, okay, Rainbow Tribe. Who you want to fight with? We got it covered. Between her and me, we got to fucking cover. Who in there want to fight with who? We can have, there's several. Choose your opponent. It was like all the gods. Choose your opponent. Krishna.
Ashley says, but how many lifetimes have you been together? At least a few. At least a few.
Yeah, we've definitely been sisters. We've definitely been sisters a few times. Like, being just rowdy. We were bad sisters, just getting into shit. We definitely were. We were just trouble.
All right. Does anybody have any more burning questions? And then if you wanted to take them, Speech, you do what you want, but then it would be really wonderful. I would like, I don't know, is it okay if I throw something out there?
Yes, please.
Like, I know everybody's asking every Black person they know, how can I help? What can I do? So I want to hear what your take is on that. And I feel like what I've been doing, I've shared a bunch of stuff, but mostly I'm like checking in with like my close people, and making sure all my close people are okay. Because that's what, I don't know, my partner was talking about COVID, and like if everybody took care of everybody who they know, then everybody would be taken care of. But also for the people who want it, and myself, specific organizations, how do you feel about organizations versus personal? Which ones do you trust? All of like, how do we act right now in a way that is not just performative?
Awesome. So in regards to organization, you kind of treat it like if you ever move and you're moving into a space that's gentrified and you want to go out to eat, you go and you find where all the locals still go.
Okay.
You move to a space and it's gentrified, you always, or you, if you want to like go be a tourist and you really want to support the local economy, you figure out where the local people are going and you go support those things. So the organizations that Black people are already given to, that like, you know, your people were already about, that you know were already on the ground, like giving to those spaces. Otherwise, give directly to people. There's a lot of like, Latimi, what she said with just taking care of your people. There's a lot of us who are just throwing everything in and like answering the call and going to the places where we need to go. So taking care of the little things for us is going to be important. Like taking, like I like was on my cooking game this whole time.
Speech, I can't hear you. Can y'all hear speech? No.
No. Mm-mm.
My love, we cannot hear you. And she's not muted. Let me try to mute her and unmute her in this place. Oh no, I think she went bye-bye. Aw. Aw. Let's see if she comes back.
I see her.
Oh, good.
Looks like she's trying to figure out the audio.
Thank you. Speech, we can't hear you, Mama. It says you're unmuted over here. Can you hear us, Speech? We just can't hear Speech. Okay, so I don't know if we get to hear you soon, but it's late anyway, and I'm sure you're tired. So if you would be willing to maybe make me a list of supporting, or I think what I heard her say is support the people that you love and that you know, send them money, get their groceries, do like the little things that they don't have, so they don't have to think about it, they don't have to do it. But also, if you do want to donate to an organization, go to like a mom and pop shop type of place. She looks like she left and maybe she'll come back. You can all follow her on Instagram at Lady Speech Sankofa, and or just Lady Speech, and you can see what her Oh, beach. Still no. So weird. Unmute. Does anybody else hear her? I could FaceTime you in on my phone. Oh.
Hey.
Oh, yay, I hear you. Okay.
Okay, good. Okay. Okie dokie. Here we go. We are back on track. So, okay, yeah, what was the question real quick? I forgot. I got all.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
Show up. Okay. So, in regards to organizations, it's almost kind of like follow the rule when you move someplace. It's like if you're moving someplace into a gentrified neighborhood and you want to make sure you support local people and you don't want to be an asshole gentrifier, then like go where the gentrifiers go, or go where the local people go. Don't go where the gentrifiers go. Like go support the places that businesses, that local people are already supporting. Find those places and give money to them. So same thing with organizations. Follow where organizations who have already been tried and true in the Black community, and that the Black people that you love and that are close to you trust. Okay, if they don't fuck with it, like if they don't fuck with the NAACP, you don't fuck with the NAACP. Like you give money to where your people are already, the people around you are benefiting, and organizations that they trust. Giving money, giving benefit, giving money directly into Black people's hands, but also supporting a lot of us in the little ways. Literally, this is bringing up a lot of trauma at the same time that we're on the front line of fighting. So a lot of us are like experiencing a whole lot. Like even yesterday I was asked to speak at the protest, and like right before I got there, like I literally started breaking down and crying, and like had memories of my ancestors and being like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to do this. Like I felt my grandmother's like tired. I felt them being like, I'm so sorry. Like I literally felt them being like, I'm so sorry you have to do this. Like we've done this. And like I was walking there in tears. So like there's places where like we're not taking care of ourselves, and so standing in the gaps in those places, like standing in those little things, like offering hot meals, like if it's with people you trust and that you know and that y'all are safe and all that in these COVID times, but also even just taking care of little shit for people, like, hey, do you need to ride somewhere? Hey, can I do this for you? Or hey, can I, where's a little thing? Do you need your house cleaned? Like, do you need help with something? Like, offering those little ways and those little things. Covering, making sure the people that, if you are friends with any of the activists, to get really real, if you know people in your city that are really active and that are public, you really got to cover them, like physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. All of the activists, the lead activists from Ferguson, especially all of the men, are dead. And that's the reality of that. Many of our freedom fighters, when you look at the civil rights movement on down, when you look at us, and that's in a lot of different, from, in the Native American space, that's a lot of different spaces, but it's a very real thing that people who speak out, people who stand in front die. A lot of people don't know that many of the major players and activists who were active in Ferguson are dead. Pretty much the ones that made it, of course, Michael Brown's mother made it and is still alive and active, but the older people are pretty much the only one. The young people are not here. So making it, those people, if you have personal relationships with those people who are public, if you have personal relationships with those people who have any type of like traction in these movements, making sure you're covering them. It's the same thing now when we look at the water protectors. There's a lot of water protectors who are dying under suspicious circumstances. So just making sure that we play the long game, and remembering that even after these freedom movements and after these things that are won, our Black bodies still pay the price for that freedom. There's been some movement and some change in Ferguson, but all those activists are dead, and all of them under super suspicious circumstances. So in a very real way, understanding that, when we say put your bodies on the line, we mean it. Like, we completely mean it, following that hierarchy, like when you're in activist space, like white people on the perimeter, the people with the most privilege are on the outskirt, and then we move in based on privilege, and we seal the circle that way. So making sure we're moving in that way, like figuratively, mentally, emotionally, you know, in very literal ways as well. If you have a close relationship with Black people, like with your people, ask them how they're doing. If you do not have a close relationship with Black people, don't ask random Black people how they're doing. But if you have a close relationship, like my people asking me, like, Speech, how are you doing? That's needed. That's super needed. That's absolutely needed. My friends who actually know me, and sometimes I have and knowing that I avoid my friends sometimes because I know I'm going to be super real, and I don't feel like talking about it. I don't feel like talking about how I am, but I appreciate it when they consistently ask me, because it reminds me to check in on myself, and it reminds me to take care of myself, in that space. So, those are the very real spaces. And also, like, remember in this moment too, that patriarchy is at play. Black trans women are out here being murdered. So please, in these movements, lift up Black trans women's names, lift up Black women's names, lift up like Black trans men's names, like cisgendered men, you know, get centered in these movements. So making sure that we are holding that space for everyone else as well. Like, Black women are getting killed at just as high as a rate. You know, Breonna Taylor is for real. And I've had many of my sisters have been, you know, on the receiving end of police brutality just as often as cisgendered men. So remembering that. But yeah, those are the very real concrete spaces, like reading the books, you know, that we put up. My Lady Speech page has a bunch of resources. Like, I keep that, especially now I have a bunch of book lists, not only for adults, but for how to explain this to children, how to help children like decolonize. So that's a space where I've been really targeted about articles and resources that people can use to like talk to people about this, and all that good stuff as well too. So there's some concrete things and websites that we can go. So.
Thank you, Lady Speech. That's really helpful. That's really helpful. And from the sidelines over here, one of our callers said she needs to hop off because protesters are being held hostage by police in NYC. And someone else earlier was late because she was talking to the government about defunding the police. So word up on that. Real, shit's really real. Okay. Anything else you want to share with us, beautiful sister, before we go? Oh no, I can't hear you now. Okay.
Just thank you to everybody who is showing up and who's willing. Thank you for everybody who's being authentic, because this is how this true, for real unification is how we amended slavery. And I say amended because it didn't end because of the prison industrial complex. But like, it got amended because of you being united. And also being united is going to help us all. Like, the police was formed out of a slave patrol. It was. And this institution spills over and hurts everybody of color. And it hurts all poor people. So when we address it at its most dramatic incarnation, at its most evilest space, and where it began, which was anti-Blackness and targeting Black people, that funnels back and like helps everybody. So thank you to everybody showing up for real and being real allies. Thank you for folks really doing the work at the course level. And that anti-Blackness work, I always start there because like, this is really like, this is the result of like, there was a bunch of people, it just became unfashionable to share your racism out loud. So it's like anti-racism work like stalled at a certain point in this country. And that's why we're here where we're here. So making sure that we do that decolonization work. So when we pass this hump, that it does stick. And doing that anti-racism work at its core is everything. And again, like, don't feel guilty. Like, we're all anti-Black. So, like, we just all got to get over it. Be like, I'm anti-Black, moving on. Now what I got to do to, like, fix it? And we all just engage in the anti-racism work. I'm Black and I'm anti-Black. It literally is a part. And I'm not, like, rampantly anti-Black. There's definitely some shit I like because of colonization. This was 400 years. This is years of a perfected system. It's real egotistical to think that, like, you know, a few years of meditation and enlightenment got me past some shit. I've definitely read some books that got me past the law, but because this has been integral, and the brutality, the way that it was really raped into us, you know, I recognize that the work I'm doing is deep, and it affects my people 7 generations back and 7 generations forward, but also it's something that we just got to be consistent about. So don't feel guilty about it. We just, like, we fuck with it and move on, and we move forward. But as a Black person, thanks to you for everybody who's showing up. Like, I appreciate that. Like, I don't have to be one of those people who has to unfriend a lot of people, and, like, the people in my circle, you know, are doing it. The white people, the Black people were doing it. So I appreciate that, because it's hard out here.
Oh, Mateo, thank you. There's some Pardee says, thank you so much, Speech. You are an incredible presence and voice of the community. Oh, Mateo, yes. Mirto says, thank you so much, Lady Speech. You have illuminated so much. Thank you for sharing sacred stories. Thank you for your guidance. Oh, Mateo. Araceli and Anya say, thank you so much for your energy, your beauty, your knowledge, and your spirit, Lady Speech. I am so grateful for you. Sending you so much love and protection. Oh, Mateo. Ashley says, deep bow. Thank you. Ming Zen says, Jamie says, thank you for your wisdom and stories. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, so is it okay if I close with a prayer for us?
Yes, please.
Oh, Mateo, Great Spirit, Tonkashila, all of our guides, all of our unseen helpers, all of our honorable ancestors who fuck with us, who we fuck with doing the work. Thank you for this beautiful human sister in front of us. Thank you for Speech, Lady Speech Sankofa. Thank you for Kiana Ray. Thank you for her medicine. Thank you for her life. Thank you for her voice. Thank you for her gorgeous Black skin and all of her ancestors. Thank you for the light. Thank you for her smile and her infectious laughter. Thank you for her ability to whoop ass and war as equal to her ability to cuddle and love and give the best hugs. Great Spirit, I ask that we honor her and her ancestors and the people she loves. I ask that we are able to share our medicine in protection of her and all Black lives at this time. Great Spirit, I ask that we are able to hold space to heal our own anti-Blackness. I ask that we are able to hold space to heal all of the ancestors who have hurt before us. I ask that we are able to hold space to heal all of the ancestors who have been hurt. I ask that the alchemy of our medicine together helps us all heal all of our ancestors, that we are united in the work for Black lives and for our collective liberation. Thank you so much, Speech, for being here with us tonight. And thank you, every single soul who has come to honor the times, to honor Black lives, to heal our own internalized white supremacy, and to dismantle the cis hetero white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. Thank you for showing up, all of us. Thank you for our DNA, and thank you that we move forward in healing together. Ometeo. All right. Jessica says, thank you both for offering this. Thank you, Lady Speech, for not only your words, but listening to your voice filled me up. And thank you, Themia, for holding space and being so down to take over in the beginning. I'm like, okay, well, I know she's doing something. She's going to come. So I'm just going to talk about my feelings right now. And then I opened my eyes, Lady Speech, and you were there.
And I was trying to scramble in for like 10 minutes. It's like, what's going on? What's going on? I can't with technology.
I was like, Spirit's like, clearly Thea needs to feel her feelings right now.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you, sister. You always hold it down. You always hold it down.
I'm doing my best. You just keep, holding me accountable. I'll keep holding it down. All right, everybody. I did record like almost as soon as she got in, but a little bit after. So is it okay with you to send it to the class speech, or and I could send it to you and you can share it to anybody who needs education?
Yes, and you can send it to the class too.
Okay, wonderful. All right, everyone. Thank you again. You're welcome to unmute yourselves and blow big kisses and wonderful words of praise and affirmation to our lovely goddess king, Captain Auntie Speech.
Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Say bye-bye, Minzen.
Bye.
Thank you for your truth.
You are welcome.
Bye-bye. Oh, no, what's wrong?
Hi, chulo. He's like, I want to see my tia.
Leave it.
Tia, that's your tia's speech. I know we miss her, huh? He's like, why are you in the computer?
I hate it when my people I love are on screens.
I know, he doesn't like that.
Yeah.
Real
He
man.
tends to look
Yeah.
behind the screen and then see you're not there and get frustrated.
He's like, this is lies. Why are you? This is a lie. The scroll is a
No
lie.
cuddles. There are no cuddles here. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. All right. Well, I love you. I love you so much.
We love you.
Much.
I'm gonna touch base with you soon. Mwah.